Welcome to the Nerd Party.
You're entering the final room in the house of Spielberg, at least on this tour. Part of the Houselights series, where we examine the works of directors from beginning to finish here on The Nerd Party. I am one of your hosts, John Mills, and I am joined once again on this journey as we arrive at Spielberg's latest blockbuster, as we go through one film per decade, Ready Player One. With me is Dr. Sci-Fi himself, Darren Moser. Darren, welcome to the Oasis. What does your avatar look like?
Oh gosh, on the spot. Didn't even. I'll be. It wasn't in the movie, but it was in the book. But I'll be Johnny Five. I'm gonna look just like Johnny Five. No disassemble.
I love it. I love it. And Tristan, since you undoubtedly are, working for IOI, how's that suit fitting today?
Oh, it's 5 times tighter than the X1. It's called the X5.
Oh my goodness.
Honestly, if I don't keep moving, my leg will die.
So you came prepared, Tristan, is what you're saying.
Why would you build sensors there? That's my one question. But my other question is, if you have not yet given a review and star rating to Houselights over on Apple Podcasts, why haven't you? Head on over there. We love to get reviews. We also love to hear from you at thenerdparty.com/contact, and go to thenerdparty.com for a whole array of shows that we have here on the network. And you can reach out to us on social media at Join Nerd Party on Twitter. And the Nerd Party is easily discoverable on Facebook and Instagram. So, like we've said, we're here talking about Ready Player One, and as with any good discussion about a movie having to do with the future, we have to start in the past. And the book comes out in 2011, and I know that I read it after numerous people hounded the hell out of me to do so, because they figured, because of all of the pop culture references, they said, oh, this book speaks your language. But Darren, I believe you read the book as well. Did you read it immediately when it came out, or did you wait a little bit?
Let's see. I think I waited a little bit. I've done the audiobook as well as the written book, mostly just so I could listen to it, while commuting or something like that. But yeah, I don't think my friends cared about me as much because they didn't hound me like yours did. So
I don't know if these people were friends,
but a great
so much
book.
as harassers.
Really enjoyed it. Really good story. And I mean, I don't want to devolve this entire conversation to, is the book better than the movie? Because we could definitely do that. But I did enjoy the book. It was even Will Wheaton's narration in the audiobook was enough for me, just for me stating.
What a sterling review that even Will Wheaton couldn't ruin the book. Tristan, you didn't read the book, correct?
That's correct. I have not read the book.
And was that a conscious choice? Was that like one of those ones where everybody was talking about it and you're like, no, I'm not interested in this?
No, John, we are the friends who would have told him and hounded him.
That's true.
But we didn't. We dropped the ball.
Well, we'll get to that one. But so
No.
Was it a conscious choice or?
No, it wasn't a conscious choice. I mean, I think I had a few people say it was good, but that was it. There's just like, I think when the movie was getting made, or when it was announced that it was Spielberg's next project, like I asked around and people are, oh yeah, no, it's good. And that's pretty much all it was. And so it wasn't a resounding, yes, oh my gosh, I have to read this. And when the movie trailer came out, I was just kind of like, I don't know. Like it turned me off a little bit from the book. And I was like, I'll just wait. Because there's a lot of times when, if there's a big movie coming out and it's based off of a popular book, I like to watch the movie first. I'm different in a lot of ways from the norm in that area, because to me, my philosophy is, if you're debating whether or not you should read the book first or watch the movie, I always default to movie, because you're always going to get a lot cut out of a book. No movie can cover an entire book. It's just not possible. And so if you watch the movie and you like it, you're like, oh, I'll try out the novel. The novel, you have so much more to experience, and so it's a new experience. But if you read the book and then watch the movie, you're just going to be disappointed, because you're like, oh, they didn't include that scene, they didn't include that scene. and my way is just better.
Well, I wouldn't presume to debate you. However, I will say
That's literally the point of the show, John. That's literally why we're here.
I'm trying to, it's a rope-a-dope. I'm trying to sucker him into it, Darren. Come on, work with me here. But it is interesting because I'm having this argument ongoing constantly with middle child, where she's a big fan of the Harry Potter books and she has watched the movies twice. She's gone through them twice. And it seems that all she can do is fixate on and rag on them because they don't include everything from the books. And I keep saying you can't include everything from the books. You have to judge movie as its own medium. You can't. And I said in the course of our most recent back and forth about it, I asked her, do you love the movie Jurassic Park as all right-thinking people do? And she said, yes, I do. And I said, you've never read the book, but let me tell you, the book is ridiculously different from the movie. They're two completely separate experiences. They have barely enough in common to be considered, one being based on the other. But before we get to how Ready Player One differs in adaptation, Darren, was this a movie you were super stoked about because you read the book and you loved the book? Like this was a modern classic and you couldn't wait to see what Spielberg, the grandmaster himself of the 80s, Steven Spielberg, comes back to make a movie about the future obsessed with him, basically. Were you excited that this was getting adapted?
No. I mean, yeah, it was I going to see it? Yes. I think I'd heard in an article that Spielberg had said that he was purposely going to not toot his own horn through the entire movie, which is a choice, but it's like, dude, this is literally your decade. So, if you're going to downplay all of the Spielberg stuff, why? But yeah, I mean, I obviously was interested in seeing it in 2018, when it came out. But yeah, I mean, again, talking about book versus movie, with how much and all of the references that are in the book, you just know that the movie can't even scratch it because you can tell this expansive story and have references up the yin yang in the book, but it's all just licensing. Like it's like I feel like the lawyers were quaking in their suits as they're like, wait, you want to turn this book into a movie? Like, let's get started in 2016 on the licensing deals before we even start cutting.
I actually spoke. No joke. I spoke to. I actually interviewed twice a lawyer from Warner Brothers. And he's like a top dog lawyer, and I interviewed him for something else, and I asked him, I was like, did you review this movie? Did you negotiate this movie? He's like, I negotiate everything. And I actually talked to him about Ready Player One. I asked him, I said, I was like, so was that difficult? Was that a nightmare because of all the references? And he's like, I don't want to talk about it. he just kind of like,
you don't even know.
He just kind of shrugged it off. He's like, yeah, man. It's just, yeah, let's just move on.
I mean, it's different than like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where you have kind of two big giants that have to kind of work together, or even, I can't believe I'm saying this, but like the newer Space Jam, which has a lot of references, but those are all Warner Brothers properties, I believe, or HBO, or somebody owns them all. So it was like a handshake with yourself, and it was easier to do. But this, I mean, the book goes everywhere and deep dives into every corner of the 80s as it can. So, but yeah, I was interested in seeing it, of course, but I was not setting up my expectations of, oh, it's Spielberg's next film, because there was no way that they were going to capture. This is one of those books that should have been a miniseries, like a 10-part miniseries. Could have done it great. It's like, let's turn Dune into a 90-minute movie. It's like, it ain't gonna happen.
Sure. And I think that additionally with the licensing, I think that I think that is one of the things where when you get into translating from book to movie, the movie definitely, it doesn't suffer because you don't have in your head all of the stuff that is referenced in the book. And So for you, it's a different experience, but just that knowledge of the fact that you're watching a movie about an alternative world created by a guy obsessed with 80s culture, and the things that are missing, even if you haven't read the book, especially for somebody who's like a super computer nerd or something like that from that era, I was sitting there thinking to myself, oh no, he would have had lots of, this and that. And I think that shortly before we started recording, Darren, you brought up Dungeons and Dragons. And
I occasionally bring up Dungeons and Dragons in regular conversation. Yes. Fair
point. But I mean, I played a fair amount of Dungeons and Dragons coming up too. And, Star Wars role-playing game and, so tabletop games were a thing. They were the video games before video games sort of vibe.
In your mind.
Yeah, exactly. It engaged your imagination, man. But it does. Tristan, did you get a sense of that absence, that there were gaps in what should have been present to somebody obsessed with pop culture from that era?
Well, I feel like I didn't really feel it too terribly much. I felt like, how do I put it? I mean, I didn't feel a big absence. I felt like there was, I thought there was more visual references than there was spoken references, which I found kind of odd because I mean, obviously there's going to be more visual references. What I'm trying to say is that I thought that there would have been more direct references in their speech patterns or in their slang. Like when you have an entire new culture that's based around one dude's love of pop culture, then you're going to have something develop around that. And like I started grinning ear to ear like an idiot when they talked about Goldeneye and how, like his favorite character was Oddjob and Slappers Only. And then they talked about The Shining. And what year did The Shining come out?
1980.
It was 1980. Okay. I could have sworn that it was something else, but like, it's just, Darren, I read about how there was, even though I didn't read the book, I read that there was a lot of Spielberg references in the book, a lot. And then everybody thought like, oh my God, Spielberg himself is going to direct it. But then he said that he was going to take out all the Spielbergness. And even I, as someone who hadn't read the book, was just like, why the friggin' hell would you do that? I mean, why wouldn't Warner Brothers get J.J. Abrams to direct it? Yes. Because, I mean, like that 8mm movie or whatever was basically him just filleting Spielberg anyway. He would have just, he would have lost his mind at the chance to do Ready Player One.
Yes. I think this movie was tailor-made for J.J. Abrams to make it. And I think it's a shame. I think that, I know that I love to talk about parallel universes where the butterfly effect came into effect. And I really think the masterstroke for Disney would have been getting Spielberg to finally direct a Star Wars movie and then let J.J. Abrams do Ready Player One. That's the inversion that I would have wanted to see, because everybody, we should have had a Spielberg movie back in 1983, and that would have been trumpets blaring from the heavens themselves if he had done a Star Wars movie. But where I struggle with the movie is not actually, and Darren, I want to get your take on this, is not actually in the lack of references per se, but in the fact that my read is that once again, we have this dystopian world set up. We just talked about Minority Report, but there's no real understanding of how that world would have to work on a societal level. There's an intellectual understanding of the poor conditions of life in the real world, but there's no real engagement with it. It's there, but it's not of importance to Spielberg somehow.
Yeah, I'll agree that. And again, obviously trimming for time, you can only build so much of the world. But one of the things that the book does very strongly is, it really establishes who Wade is in the real world first. And he's a student, and there's a whole chunk of the book where he's just going to school, and there's school in the Oasis because that's just what everybody does. And they paint the world really well, and it's really interesting of what would it be like if this technology existed, but nobody's traveling anywhere, everyone's poor, but at a minimum every K through 12 kid is given an Oasis headset, and that's their school, and they all remote in. And that was a great part, and there's like none of that, in the movie, which again, I'm not saying every piece needs to be in. I know you have to change it and adapt for a film, but I really enjoyed the story of Wade in the book, and it's not really Wade's story in the movie. Like, you don't really connect with him or his hopes and dreams. Like, you really get a sense of like what the Oasis means to him in the book. You get more time with him being like, life is junk. It's really not fun. There's no prospects. There's no, silver lining except the Oasis. That is it. That is all these kids have going for them in their generation. Like, the previous generations just messed everything up. Can't understand what that would feel like. But you get this story of him and him growing and becoming that protagonist and becoming the head and who he is, whereas we kind of get the last third of that arc in the movie, where it's very kind of chosen one syndrome, which isn't, he's not worthy of it, but we aren't given that building blocks that would really make us feel like he's worthy of it in the film. So that's a big push.
Yeah,
I'd love to ask you guys, and I don't think this would ruin anything for me, because I do want to read the book, but obviously if it spoils something, it doesn't matter. But at the end of the movie, he says that he closes the Oasis on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Does he do that in the book?
I can't remember.
I don't believe so.
If the Oasis is so integral,
right,
to society as you're describing,
I don't
and
think
even
it
in the
was
movie,
in the book.
But
No.
like, and when you're talking about like people go to school in the Oasis and everything like that, or like business happens in the Oasis, like when I
That's
heard,
like turning off the internet for a day.
yeah,
like,
that's what I was
Right.
thinking. I was just like, you're just gonna turn off the internet on Tuesdays and Thursdays because you want somebody to go into a swing, outside in the breeze. Like it that kind of pissed me off a little bit, because I'm like, what about what about the people who are like, I don't know, like you know what I'm saying?
It's the same trap of the easy moralizing at the end that Spielberg falls into with Minority Report of,
thank you, yes.
oh, and everything's fine now. And everybody's happy. It suddenly got better, and we have to wrap this up in 30 seconds or less. So here he is kissing the girl. Good night. Like, and that absolutely drove me nuts in the movie, because of the fact that, and this is again why I think Spielberg was the wrong director for this overall, is while he came up making movies like Sugarland Express and Jaws and stuff like that, and even The Family in E.T., he has a knack for evoking the common family, quote unquote, the average everyday life sort of family. And I think that Spielberg is far enough in age and far enough removed from what we would consider everyday life that it's harder for him to put together the ending that we are going to buy into, if that makes sense. I think also the movie takes a couple of detours that they paint themselves into a bit of a corner by the end. And again, it's just that feeling of having to put your foot on the gas pedal because, okay, we already asked about 2.5 hours. We got to get the audience out because they're done with us. Let's get them out the door. While we sit there and we can ding the ending, I think that was sort of a predictable, even for me, the first time I saw it, because I did see this in the movie theater. I saw this with middle child, and she, of course, had not read the book. And I remember asking her at the end of it, saying, well, what did you think, kiddo? And her reaction was, eh. And so she was very underwhelmed. There wasn't enough here to connect with her. And so, Darren, do you think that this movie, with its obsession with reference, alienates younger members of the audience by not doing what you're mentioning of building more of the actual world that the characters are living in, and instead obsessing with the virtual world cultural references.
That's a good point. I mean, again, if you want to care about a protagonist, you need to know what their struggles are and what their motivation is, what their desires are. And I mean, they skim into it a tiny bit with like Artemis and her dad and like the loyalty centers you get a lot more of the economics of the future. It's like, well, if everybody has to work in the Oasis, or it's like, I have a brick and mortar shop and no internet. It's like, you're not going to survive. So, but if you don't have the money for the top gear to get in, then you take out a loan. And then if you lose that loan, then you go to the loyalty center and you have to basically, manually push the button. You're the little cog in the back of the room. But yeah, it's hard to say without being, I can only look at it as someone who's my age and has my knowledge of the 80s. It's hard to kind of like turn off that part and be like, would I feel out of it if I didn't know that stuff? But what I took more away from this movie, especially having just watched Minority Report, where Minority Report, it is establishing that future, but it is just the lightest brushstroke of enhancing that future with CGI. It's like, okay, there's a little maglev system in the background, and there's a little flying thing over there, and but at its core, you felt like it was real. And again, I know we're in the Oasis, but there's so many parts of this movie where I'm like, every single thing that I am watching is CG, and our cameras are doing crazy flips, and it just was really not grounding at all. Like, this is not shot in a cinematic, beachfront way for this giant battle or the race. Like, those are the big two, like the race and the battle. And I get it, but there's so much stuff. I mean, it felt like, Sorrento, where he's got so many reference ads in my field of view. Hey, we did the research, and Spielberg said we can get our references dialed up to 85% of your field of vision before inducing seizure. Like, that's kind of what it felt like in some of those moments. So I would have liked to see, yes, keep the references, but shoot it in a way where references should be things I see in the background, and it's like, aha, on my second viewing, not so jammed in the frame.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, because this is really something where he falls victim, I think, to the very urges we see him fighting, going back to our discussion about Always, where the camera, we all praise the plane shots overall, because the camera was anchored in a way that spoke to us, that the visual language said, I believe that this picture can happen. I can be the little gremlin sitting on the wing looking in the window. And so I buy it. I believe in it. Whereas here, there is so much camera movement and so much going on. And in essence, it really is an animated movie. And honestly, it feels like an animated movie where Spielberg just trusted the effects guys to do something cool, and he would come in and say whether it looked cool or not, as opposed to giving them specific direction and giving actors specific direction on set.
Well, actually, from what I've read, is that Spielberg spent 3 hours, like he had a set, like I think 3 sessions a week, 3 hours at a time with ILM during post-production. For this, so he was not hands off.
Oh no, I wasn't meaning to imply hands off. I was meaning to imply that he wasn't sitting there trying to put a visual stamp on it the way that he would with a live action movie, right? I can look at Jurassic Park and say that's a Steven Spielberg movie. I can look at Raiders of the Lost Ark. I can look at Always. I can say I can look at Poltergeist. Sorry, I mean that's a Tobe Hooper movie, but I can look at these things and I can say that looks like a Spielberg movie. I struggle with this one. I don't see something visually that is a Spielberg movie. Maybe, Tristan, you do. Is there something I'm overlooking?
There's a few things, like there's a few shots here and there where you're just like, no, this is him. This is, I can't point it out to you. Like, I can't say like, oh yeah, you remember that time. But there was, actually, maybe I can. If you're looking in the Oasis, I feel like when he gets his first key, when he drives backwards and he gets the first key, there's that shot at the fountain, like that scene feels very like you kind of have this crane in, and like the trumpets are playing, the crane in and goes through the trumpets. That's, like Oasis-y, like that's virtual. But then once we land and we cement our feet on the ground, there's something about the way the wind moves and the sun is glaring, and like the two shot and the singles, and how they were cut just felt very, for lack of a better word, Spielbergian. And I want to kick my own ass for saying that, but it's I think like those kind of shots, like the casual conversations, I think like a lot of the real world stuff feels like him. And when two characters is just having a conversation within the Oasis feels like him in my mind. I could be overstating it, but I don't think he was devoid, but of this movie, of his signature, but it was probably, out of every movie that I've seen of his, this was the least with a fingerprint.
And it's interesting because Janusz Kaminski is still working with him on this, and he was quoted in at least one article where he said, I have no interest in this movie because I'm paraphrasing. These are not his exact words, but the basic gist of what he was saying was, I don't feel like I really did anything here. I'm a cinematographer and there's nothing real. There's no shot for me to have set up here outside of a few live, in-person interactions. And so he was basically expressing some frustration because he felt like he didn't have a job to do, really. Because and that's the thing too, is I think that especially in the Oasis, there's nothing about the lighting. And that is something that is sort of a Spielberg signature, is you can tell by the lighting, and you even called out the lighting, the way that it was lit when he arrives at the fountain after the race. You can look at that and you can say, okay, even if it weren't Spielberg, you would say this looks like a Spielberg type of treatment to things. Whereas there's a whole lot in this movie that just, it's just another animated movie. There was nothing that said Spielberg had to be the one to do this. And that's why I almost wonder, I think as everybody else does, and we mentioned earlier, Abrams would have been more comfortable with this. Abrams is from this time period and he knows how to sling this camera around in a way that we buy it. And so I hate to put it this way, and Darren, I want to, am I being too harsh here? But my reaction when I first saw this movie was, Spielberg should not direct any more blockbusters. He needs to just walk away. This is not where his heart is.
I mean, the main thing I kind of took away from, like we were just talking about, like the visual, and there's so much just like jammed on screen. Like, I think back to like Saving Private Ryan. Like Spielberg can tell an incredibly complex scene in a really cinematic way. Like that's a crazy amount of visual information going on in that. Where is our protagonist? What's going on? Where's the bad guy? Who's shooting? And I wish we had that in the finale, storming the castle. And instead we got shot of Halo guys, shot of Fortnite guys, shot of, which again, it's funny. I mean, I get it, but there's just so, and we're cutting back and forth to the real world. And it's like, it's like he's got the tools and he has the knowledge, but maybe because it's not him developing more of the story and the characters, because it's an adaptation from a book, and not that he's shoehorned in. I mean, obviously there's lots of changes between the book and the movie, but you at its core though, you still have Wade Watts that you have to develop. You still have these other characters that you can't change too much, or it's not even that story. So yeah, I mean, Spielberg can write his own ticket. And at this point, maybe he should write his own ticket and tell his own stories, and maybe stay. I would kind of agree in staying away from adaptations, at least from books. That might just give him more flexibility to fully tell a Spielberg story, which he's great at. And I mean, I know Jaws is a book adaptation. I know other things he's done are adaptations, but maybe in 2018 and beyond, adapting books is, that's like having the maestro do, a small piano piece rather than a concerto. Use his tools and his talent in a bigger way. But yeah, I'll agree along those lines.
Well, speaking of tools and talent, though, one of the editors on here is Michael Kahn, who has worked with Spielberg numerous times throughout his career, and an accomplished editor. And he's working with Sarah Brochard. And so, Tristan, I'll kick it over to you first here. Is there anything about the pacing or the editing that speaks as a Spielberg movie? That's part one of the question. And part two is, despite the film's length, do you think it moves as fast as it needs to? Do you feel that it gets hitched at any point? Do you feel that it, gets cul-de-saced in any way?
I think it moves at a pretty good pace, considering. I was surprised. I thought it was going to be rushed. I thought it was going to be overly rushed because, I've heard about how dense the book is, and whenever you're dealing with something this popular and this massive, that people were going to think, like with Harry Potter books, that they were, condensing too much. And so in order to put more into it, your clip is a little too fast. But I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like it was too rushed. I felt like there was some scenes that were rather short where I'm like, oh, and we're moving on. Like, oh, and we're moving on. I definitely, I guess I'm going back and forth in that thought. It wasn't so much where I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't catch my breath. But it definitely was, I was never bored, and I never was just like, oh my gosh, like here, like what's going on with the scene? Although there was one scene where when Wade meets Artemis in the real world for the first time, and they're on that rooftop, and the music was so in your face during that scene. I was just like, okay, calm down, Silvestri. They're sitting on a rooftop. Like they're not swinging in each other's arms. They're not running across a field together. They're literally sitting together on a rooftop. Let's calm it down. That was the only time, but I think that was less about the editing and more about the music. But in terms of editing, was there anything that would like scream to me Spielberg? Not really, because I feel like since so much of this took place in the Oasis, I think Khan did a great job of blending the editing where you're not taking notice to it. There was no editing tricks. There was no in your face editing. Like you very much went into the background. And I know that Thelma Schoonmaker, Scorsese's editor, she says that she hates it when like editors want to be noticed just like everybody else. But the common phrase is like, if no one notices your editing, then you did a good job. This, I think, is one of those times when the editing is not the star of this film. And within the Oasis, what I was trying to say earlier was there's so many shots that kind of blend together and move. And since the camera does some crazy stuff that a camera can't do in real life, you can blend your editing better and not make it so in your face.
Darren, do you have any additional insights about the editing that you gleaned? Is there anything that you see as jumping out as phenomenal work?
It's funny, in the very first shot of the Oasis where I love that, like where the camera's like going into his visor as he's putting it on. And it made me think of like the Lego movie when they're introducing all the locations and they're like, yes, there's Middle Zealand and Brick World. And it's like, again, they're trying to do that. It's an info dump, and we know it. I mean, they're trying to say, hey, what if the internet was virtual reality? Because that's what it is. And hey, and maybe they should have done more of, hey, this is the real world, and this is how we're living it, and people log on every day. And they showed a little bit of that just in the stacks. But yeah, I mean, again, I want to give Spielberg credit because he is involved. It's not just like he was on autopilot. And there are obviously choices and locations and sets. I think there's some great sequences like in the archive where how would you visually represent memories and journals, and how would you access that if you had an avatar that walked around? Like, he has to build all of this out from scratch and tell that story, like they're looking in through the picture window. I think probably one of my favorite sequences, though, is the Shining sequence. I mean, because it
oh my gosh,
it blends between like I'm playing a video game, but I'm also stuck in a horror movie, and it's just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I think they actually recreated based off of like blueprints the exact layout of the house and all of that. And it was kind of weird not seeing like Jack or any of the other main characters from The Shining.
Yeah.
Just the villains, but
you'd have to pay for their
likenesses.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
For their likeness. But I was blown away by that scene. And my wife and I, that's one of our favorite movies.
It's
We
like, imagine
absolutely
if
love
it was
The
on the
Shining.
holodeck. That's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And so she and I were watching this, and we were actually surprised at how long we were in The Shining, like how long that scene was. And we were pleased because we love the movie. And when we first see The Shining, I said out loud, I'm like, holy crap, is that real? Is that real footage, or is that a recreation? Like, I couldn't tell. And after we were done with the movie, I started looking into it, and it looks like they mixed and matched stuff. So like there were some scenes that were ripped straight from the prints, like straight from a 35 millimeter print of The Shining. So some of it was real, but when you see the camera give you alternate angles, of course it's not real, but like they blended it so well. Man, that was probably screw the rest of the Oasis. That blending and that recreation was probably the pinnacle of the technological achievement of the movie, in my opinion.
I agree. I think that the Shining part was, I thought that it played again, and I think that this is a problem throughout the whole movie, is the cheap laugh moments.
You mean of H being afraid or not having seen it? And
I thought that was great.
I'm not. I'm not talking
fun.
about that.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when all of the Sixers are screaming out and screaming and freaking out and everything. I thought that was just a bit overdone. I think there's, again, much like some of the stuff in Minority Report, some of the humor is just a little too clumsy, I guess. You go back to the beginning of the movie, and the woman's breakfast is burning on the stove, and the son is trying to interrupt her, and she's pushing the son down, and it's just that it's not really funny. Like, when you think about it, that's a horrific moment to behold, but it's being played for a laugh. But then you get to the Sixers, and then you have a moment where, Sorrento gets kicked in the nuts, and it's, we have a balls joke. Okay, that's fine. I
always roll my eyes at the balls jokes. Yeah,
so overplayed by this point, and so I think that I don't have anything to contribute to beyond what you guys have said about the editing and stuff like that. And obviously, the humor is just the thing that I sort of fixate on from, when I think about this movie, where it's like, this is once again something where it shows an intellectual engagement with the material, but not like an empathetic one. There's a sense of distance from Spielberg with the material here.
I think that's a really solid way of putting it. I think that's really great, because I don't want to be insulting and say, he was on autopilot and you could tell, but there was a distance. There was a disconnect. You could tell that even though he helped shape the 80s and helped shape pop culture in the 80s, it felt like he was out of his element with this movie, where he didn't have that touchstone. He didn't have that anchor.
But see, I think that's specifically because Spielberg is a guy, he has never rested on his laurels. He's been continually making film and moving and moving and moving and getting projects done, much like Scorsese did. Where Scorsese just makes movies. He doesn't sit there and recapitulate and go back and think about stuff that he's done. Occasionally he'll, poop on Marvel movies and stuff like that, but he just keeps going, and he keeps trying, and he keeps evolving as a filmmaker. And I think that Spielberg just is not the type of filmmaker, and this is a compliment to him. he's an artist who doesn't. I did that. That's my past. I'm not worried about that. I want to make the paper, and I want to make Amistad in Munich and those sorts of things. And that's, that ties into where I was saying earlier, he shouldn't be making these blockbusters anymore because he has evolved. He's gone past this, and I will always celebrate what he did in the past, and I will always celebrate the good that he does and has done. But this is not a guy who wants to go back and look back and be like, hey, wasn't that a lot of fun? He's too busy doing other projects. His eyes are forward, like any artist. And so it's, it's just one of those things. But he does get, I think, some very solid performances out of people. And
that's true. That's true.
Oh, huge disagreement. Huge disagreement.
Really? I didn't say I didn't say all of them were solid performances. I said some solid performances, but that triggered but that triggered you. I want to know where you think he didn't get a solid performance.
Oh, I thought the acting was horrible in this movie.
On the whole?
No. Besides Mark Rylance. I think, is that how you say his name? Rylance? Mark Rylance?
Who played James Halliday?
Yeah.
Well, he was actually acting.
Yeah, he did a phenomenal job. He was great. Like, I loved him all throughout it. I felt like he did the nervous guy really well, but like not the he wasn't inept.
He's kind of like a character from the IT Crowd. It's very IT Crowd vibe.
Yeah, I can see that, like IT Crowd or that HBO show Silicon Valley, like like somebody from there, like you
socially awkward but brilliant.
Yeah, but it wasn't off-putting. Like, he wasn't annoying because he was so. I keep saying the word inept, but like you could, like, when he was presenting, you could tell, like when he was presenting the first almost said Oculus, but when he was presenting the first Oasis, you could tell he wasn't a showman. You could tell that Peg was the showman. He was the Jobs to his Wozniak, and you could tell that, but it wasn't like, oh, this guy's an idiot and he can't even speak in front of people. Like, he actually joked and held the room and everything like that. So I really appreciated that. And like, for like, one of the last words that he spoke was, "Thank you for playing my game." For some reason, that just kind of hit me, because for a man like that, just the fact that somebody would want to play his game, something that he created and spent, like hours and hours and hours and hours, like, like thousands of hours more on creating something. It's just like, thank you for doing that. Thank you for playing my game. It just felt like a very real world moment. I felt he did a great job as that wizard and his avatar, and he did a great job as his actual person. And the humor, I thought, from him worked really well. I have nothing but great things to say about him, but honestly, almost everybody else I thought did really. The protagonist, oh good Lord.
Really?
No charm whatsoever. It was just a chasm of joy. And was it H or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I thought she did a great job in The Shining, but once we got into the real world, I felt like especially in the real world, I felt like people were just phoning it in. Everybody was just phoning it in. It felt like they were just like, okay, come on, let's get the real world stuff done so we can get back to post, and do the Oasis stuff.
But see, that's where I would fault Spielberg, not them. But
I wasn't blaming them or Spielberg. I'm just saying it was not good.
And the second part of my phrase was that I don't agree that it was all phoning it in that sense, in the real world stuff. I thought Mendelsohn knew why he was there, which was to be just a scene chomp. Yeah, he's to be another scene chomping moment. And it's like, I enjoy seeing him in that. I think that he gives a good performance in that. And I think that
we stand here amid my achievement.
Yes,
not
basically.
Yours.
Poor guy. He's just carving out a whole thing of underachieving villains, isn't he?
I thought Mendelsohn did fine. I thought there was some, I like how he, when he was trying to speak the language of Percival or whatever, like you could tell he casually, slipped into the, like, I'm not a suit, man.
But like, he's got it in his ear,
but he's got him in his ear. Like, he wasn't hamming up the scene. Like, it would have been easy to like go over the top and say, "Hello, fellow kids," but he, like, it was,
dudes.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like like Middleton did a great job. I think Rylance did better, but everybody else honestly was.
I don't agree. I think that I think Sheridan's actually pretty good. He's not great. I'm not going to nominate him for any awards or anything, but I believed him as Wade. I believed him. I think that the problem is that you're right that they seem unmoored when they're in the quote unquote real world.
It's like two performances. Like they're almost completely different people in and out of the Oasis, which again, maybe that's the point, but.
And so I wonder if part of the problem is that we spend so much time with them in the Oasis that their real world selves don't seem to be the real ones to us, which, if I'm being generous, I'll be like, true. Oh, well, that's on purpose. But I don't think it is.
Very generous.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I think that there are some story structure problems that don't help anybody in this. I think that there are a couple of things that just feel very tacked on, and it's because they move and fast forward to get all of the characters together in one location so that they can have one big climactic thing.
Whereas so did everybody live in Columbus? Like what?
Right. That's the thing.
I mean, again, in the book, there's more traveling and there's a lot more in the real world as well. But yeah, it's exactly for time purposes. Hey, we're all here. Surprise.
Right.
Like even a side note saying like, oh, I started my journey or something like when you got the first key, I started making my way. Just even something like that would have been.
I mean,
nice
they do point out that being there, that's why IOI is situated there, is it's the best connection. Like that's the hub of the Oasis. And they kind of mention it a bit, like when Mendelsohn, when Sorrento is saying, hey, you'll get 30 million and I'll move you here, because that's why all the businesses move there, is it has the best connection, of the least latency, because that's where the Oasis is housed.
Yeah. But I don't think that anybody was necessarily award worthy. I just think that their performances were plenty good on the whole. And I think that's where the Spielberg shows through. That's where I was trying to give Spielberg some credit, is I think that he still knows how to get actors to show up, whether they showed up more for the virtual stuff than the real world stuff. I don't know. I mean, maybe that was a vibe on the set. Maybe, Kaminsky's disconnection with it was, that energy can flow out from the person who's shooting the film. It's like, all right, guys, let's go through this. Let's get a couple of takes. Like if he's lackluster, that's going to bleed over into others and those sorts of things. But be that as it may, one thing I did want to ask about, which Tristan, you hit on before, was the music. And you hit that one scene where it was too much in your face. Darren, what did you think of the score? What did you think that this was a sufficient score? This was an excellent score? This was a forgettable score?
That the first thing that jumps out to me was the Zemeckis riffs towards the end. Like anytime we had some sort of Back to the Future reference, or we were going deep in the nostalgia, we had the little like and I'm like, oh, I know what that means.
Yeah, no, that tugged at the heartstrings for me too. Like whenever we had a callback, a musical callback, I was just like, oh yeah, from the thing.
Yeah. So those parts were great. Again, I mean, this wasn't John Williams. Not that it has to be, but he started it and then went off to do, I think, the post. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just too connected with Williams scores. Like I like themes around my character. I like, there was no Wade Watts motif. There was no, I like that in my scores. And, so maybe that's why the part I did connect with was the motifs of the other referenced material. And those are the parts I remember the most. Like, when he throws his DeLorean kit bash, into hover mode, and it's like, oh yeah, just these fun little pieces. But yeah, so I mean, overall, was it a overwhelming, great score? It's hard for me to pick out pieces without motifs. Otherwise it just kind of becomes the score in the background. I mean, that's where it is.
Tristan, what were your thoughts outside of the one scene where you think Silvestri made himself too known?
Honestly, the same exact thoughts as Darren. I mean, I not to be lazy, but I can't add anything more.
You're in the
to
Oasis,
what
copy
Darren
and
said.
paste. It's so easy. Just boop,
Yeah.
boop.
Right. Yeah, and I think that I think Silvestri just doesn't know what to do with it in some sense, where it's like, okay, this is just I think that if he showed up and it was like, oh, this is Steven Spielberg's new movie. Oh my gosh, I get to do Steven Spielberg's new movie. Well, actually, it's a CG animated movie. Oh, all right. And also the fact I think he's hurt. He starts to step back because the movie, since everything's about references, is very obsessed with music.
That's true. I was just going to say songs from the
era.
motion picture was a bigger sense. We have We're Not Gonna Take It. We have Staying Alive. We have,
Right.
all these other, that's where you're trying to get the reaction is from those referenced songs rather than the score.
Right. And it's, so I think that the score is there. It's, it's not bad work. It's just there. And before we, as we love to say, we're rounding third here. Before we get to our ratings, I do want to toss in there. I want everybody, to have an opportunity. Like, is there one thing that you think if you changed about this film would make it better for you? Like one thing. Not, you can't be like, well, yeah, J.J. Abrams directed it. I'm talking about, is there something about the film itself where you looked at it and when it happened, you said, if they'd taken a couple more weeks developing this, they would have realized this was the wrong call and they would have gone with a different solution. And I know what my pick would be, but Tristan, I want to put you on the spot. Is there one thing you think that if you altered it would fix the film a little bit?
I don't know if this is the right answer or the answer that is best from my perspective, but the first thing that popped in my head was not have the final three of the five of them meet up at the same time. I would have liked to have had a meet up for as the movie went on, like as the third act was going on, where they meet in real life as the adventure is going on, not just like, oh, he meets Artemis in real life and then he meets the three other people at the same time in the same van. I would have, and I have no idea if that's how it is in the book, but
I think it is more like that in the book. It's a little more staggered.
Yeah. That's the word I was looking for. Like stagger it out just a little bit. But again, I know you have to compress time and everything like that, but that's the first thing that pops in my head. I don't know why. Seems odd to me that they're just like, oh, we're in Columbus and the three of us are here. I don't know.
Darren?
Yeah, I kind of like what I said in the beginning, where one of the parts from the book I really liked was Wade at school, because that's a big part of the establishment of his character. And this kind of like thinking about it more, this is kind of like, and then one day when I went on summer vacation, this adventure happened. And it's like, because there is no school and it's just everything's about the Oasis, and all of his time in the Oasis is spent, what is it called? Gunting?
Yeah, gunting.
So, which is great. And again, for time compression, I understand it, but I would have loved an opening act of, the bullies bullying him and the economics of I think a big piece of the economics of the Oasis is the fact that you have to pay to jump between areas. And so as a poor student, you have your government issued Oasis headset and you have a free credit to go to school, and that is it. So he is always the one who's left behind and always has to just stay on the school planet, which, I felt already I was relating to him from that youthful wanting to get out and about. So I would have added something of that in the very beginning. I think that's important to the character and adding to that. But what I will say, one piece that I did like in the film, a visual representation between the Oasis and the real world, was in the IOI building. I think they masterfully communicated what was going on. So if during the big end fight and everyone's in those little, they're not like pods or chairs, but they're standing discs, and a laser shoots through 5 people, and then we cut to the real world and we see 5 in a row like turn red, or the giant shockwave at the end like takes everybody out. Like, I really liked that. I liked that intercut of, the technical part of my brain goes, well, there's no reason that those 2 characters would be standing next to each other in the Oasis, but
Right.
I let it go because it's trying to convey what's happening to, these legions of IOI, workers. But I liked that. I thought that was a really clever way to visually communicate something that would be very difficult to do. I like that.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of things that are a little insurmountable unless you want to go to, like a page 1 rewrite sort of thing. But the one thing that has annoyed me since the first time I watched it, actually, was the way they handled the extra life coin. It just doesn't, it's such a hand of God cheat the way it's done in the movie, where you suddenly realize there were no stakes at all. No matter what happened, he was going to make it there. And so it's sort of deflating, because it just feels like there was, it undercuts whatever struggle there was to get to that point. And, and then it just wraps up way too neatly after that. But I think that's sort of the first domino to fall in that regard. But, be that as it may, I'm sure there are people out there that think that this is, a 5-star masterpiece, and that's fine. That's cool. I know I'm not in that camp, but I'm curious to know what camp you guys are in. Darren, we'll start with you. On a scale of 5, magical keys, how many do you give Ready Player One adaptation from 2018, directed by Steven Spielberg?
No, John, there's only 3 magical keys. So no, I gave it a 3. It's a fun movie. I think the references it does well are enjoyable. It makes me want to read the book again or listen to it. And for what it is, it's a movie adaptation of Ready Player One. It's exactly what it is, and it's exactly what I expected going into it. Is it gonna have cool references and cool things? Yes. Is it gonna anywhere near touch what the book could convey because it's a book? No, but I wasn't really expecting that. So right in the middle, I'll give it 3 magic keys.
All right. Well, since magic keys were a faulty scale, for which I apologize. How many, Tristan, out of 5 Sorrento style gaming ball rigs would you give Ready Player One?
With passwords on the Post-it note.
Yeah. Maybe that's the thing I would have changed.
My initial reaction was to give it a 3, like Darren. But I started on reflection and on talking about it with you guys. I feel like both my wife and I were like, oh, well, that wasn't terrible. Like we thought it was going to be garbage. Like, we put off watching this for years. Like, I had access to it for years, and we just couldn't pull the trigger because it just looked like it was going to be a CGI slugfest. And we just really had no interest in that. And the trailers did nothing to reel us in. And probably the only reason why I watched this was because of this podcast. And so I had a very the bar was set very, very low. And when it was done, both she and I are just like, oh, okay, all right, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, and so I wanted to give it 3 stars, but honestly, that's not a good enough reason to give it 3 stars. So I'd have to give it like a 2.5, just because it felt like it was lacking a lot of depth. The ending was wrapped up too neatly. The performances, I can't really forgive. There's a lot of great things in it, but my 3-star rating is liked it, but it has its issues. My 2.5 is missed the mark. If I could give it a 2.75, I would, but I'm gonna have to settle on 2.5.
Why not just make it?
We can only have so much granularity, Tristan. I mean,
I know.
You got to draw the line somewhere.
I propose we all need to sign up as a patron account on Letterboxd and get them to give us 10th delineations.
No,
so
we don't.
Yeah,
do an American 1/32 or something like that.
I like that. I like it, dividing it by 30 seconds. I will say that this is, I believe, the third time that I've seen this film. I saw it in the movie theater where I was, okay, it's it's fine. And then when it first, was available for free on streaming, I was like, let me give it another try. Maybe I was just in a bad mood that day. And it really more solidified it. And this time, I was less engaged. The seams show a lot more. So I landed a 2. And yeah, this is
Red alert. We're sliding down.
Yeah. I don't, this isn't where Spielberg belongs anymore. He didn't belong here. And, to crib from my own review over on Letterboxd, this is what J.J. Abrams should have been working on instead of preparing to underwhelm the world with The Rise of Skywalker. So I will go ahead and that's where I am. We have a 2. We have a 2.5, 2.75, possibly a 2.77 somewhere from Tristan. I don't know.
Stop.
And from Darren, we have a nice, easy to digest 3. So Darren, if anybody wants to make contact with you and argue their points as to why this is in fact a 5-star film and one of Spielberg's best since Jaws, where can they find you online?
They can argue their points as long as they are round decimal numbers, finding me on drsci-fi.com, DRSCIFI, or hear me on the Nerd Party talking about Star Trek on SETI Alpha 3 or being a maker on Maker's Method, along with the show here.
Cool. And also, just as a side note, I was recently at a collector's convention down here in Central Florida. And there was a guy who made a bunch of his own stuff, and he had made Dabo chips. And I said, "Oh, I have a friend, and he makes isolinear chips, and they're quite cool looking." And he goes, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Yeah, maybe you've heard of him, Dr. Sci-Fi." And he crinkled his brow for a second. He said, "Yeah, I think I have heard of that guy." So you're known all the way in Central Florida, young man. So congratulations.
That's good. I'll take it as good.
It is good. No. Land of Disney down here. That's a good thing. So, Tristan, where can people find you for at least 0.27% of every day?
Well, I like to give my numbers like in frame rates, so it's like 23.96 instead of neither here nor there. Yeah, you can find me at The Insane Robin on Letterboxd as well as Twitter. You can find me on this network at thenerdparty.com doing another show in addition to this called Second Contact, a Lower Decks commentary podcast. It's a lot of fun, and we think we're funny, so hopefully you think so too. So you guys should check it out.
Absolutely.
John, how about you?
You can find me as Kessel Junkie out there in the wild west of the not yet Oasis, KESSELJUNKIE. Find me on Letterboxd. It's a lot of fun right here on the network. You can find me co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast of a slightly different stripe, co-hosted with Matthew Rushing. And you can also find me out there getting excited about the next house we're going to enter into, guys. We're returning to a house in our next series. We're returning to the House of Coppola when we are going to look at the works of Francis Ford Coppola in the 1990s, which, I don't know, maybe that'll be the heavy reference point for Ready Player 12 when Ernest Cline gets around to releasing that. But I am very excited about returning to House of Coppola. I know that all 3 of us are thrilled that you joined us here on the Nerd Party for the Houselights series. And until next time, keep the popcorn fresh.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.